At long last, we come to the third Equestria Girls movie, or, as I like to put it, the end of the first phase. The first Equestria Girls movie established the world and introduced us to Sunset Shimmer. Rainbow Rocks made Sunset a likable character and laid the groundwork for the alternate Twilight's introduction. Now we conclude the setup before the franchise moved on to shorts, choose your ending stories, and TV specials. Not bad for a franchise that met with such heavy resistance, though I can't call this movie a triumph. There's a lot of awkwardness and frustration just to reach the new dynamic. But before we dive in, I have to wonder, if we're seeing the alternate world's Twilight, or Sci-Twi as fans call her, what became of Sunset's counterpart? And that, my fellow fans, is why I still shouldn't make headcanons.
Twilight Sparkle is kind of the icon of the smart girl, the bookish girl. Usually those kinds of characters are portrayed as, librarian types who are kind of quiet and awkward and don't want to talk to anybody. But I've known so many girls, like young girls, who got excellent grades, always had lots of extracurricular activities at school, and most of them they weren't nerdy types. They were all really pretty and nice.
I quote this not to say that Lauren Faust's word is law, but rather to draw attention to how character design and presentation speaks to how we view the world. One of My Little Pony's greatest strengths has always been its characters. The stories can often be predictable for older folk like myself, but the energy these characters bring creates a different appeal. The Equestria Girls series has inherited some of the strengths, as the Humane Five were close to their pony counterparts, but with some unique traits thanks to the environment. The Sirens were fun characters due to their conflicting personalities. However, because these movies are few and far between, it stands out more if a character doesn't work. Friendship Games has 3 goals, not all of which align. First off, it needs to introduce us to this world's Twilight. Then it has to establish a relationship between her and the Humane Six, especially Sunset. But then there's likely a corporate mandate.
Merchandise everything.
We're about to get bombarded by more than half a dozen new characters. I'm afraid their characterization, or lack thereof, is one of the movie's greatest shortcomings. But before that... Yes, Sunset is sporting a new outfit, as seen in the music videos My Past Is Not Today and Friendship Through the Ages. I really like the new emphasis on the cooler colors that contrast the fiery tones in her hair, and contrasting a feminine attire like a skirt against a leather jacket and high-heeled boots. Boots that are not the massive footwear we usually see. It all reflects the range Sunset can now express. Why is she in such a hurry?
I got your text, Rainbow Dash.
Turns out Rainbow just needs some instrument maintenance. Not a big deal on its own, but there's a hint of a larger problem here.
I was in the middle of sewing a very complex applique on my latest frock. And I was just about to tuck everyone in for the night at the shelter.
Which is pretty irresponsible of her. I hope she's learned a lesson that she should—
Come on, let's go!
Wait, where are they going? Why are they going inside? The animals need tucking in. And Rarity said something about a frock, which makes me want to make really inappropriate puns. Why the frock are you all following Rainbow Dash's impulse? And that's the larger problem. One of the reasons it's hard to root for some of these characters, including ones that are already established, is that they don't live up to their responsibilities. Sunset's one of the few who takes things seriously, such as when she spots a suspicious person.
We can adjust the PKE meters to pick up potential vibrations.
One brief chase scene later, and we're reintroduced to Sci-Twi as she heads to a new location, Crystal Prep.
Close your eyes.
Why, oh fond memory of Leslie Nielsen, why would I need to close my— my looking parts, why would you— you did it again! Is the whole dang movie gonna be this hazardous? Back at Canterlot High, Sunset and friends talk about the possibility of another magical foe.
The last thing we need is another magical so-and-so bent on world domination coming over from Equestria.
I really love this scene. It's the ultimate statement that the group has moved forward. They're able to joke about something that, in the last movie, was an open wound. It's good to put the no offense parade to rest, if only for one movie, because we've got a rivalry to face. Canterlot High versus Crystal Prep, a completely one-sided feud that seems to do nothing but depress the Canterlot Wondercolts.
Well, it's not like we'll be fighting the powers of evil magic.
No, we'll be fighting against a school full of meanies. Not everything has to be magical to be important.
I agree with both of them. I'm a sucker for adventure stories. Love seeing characters pit themselves against challenges and emerging from the experience changed. Yet a majority of the shorts put online leading up to this movie didn't feature magic as a source of conflict. Yes, Sunset faced the challenge in The Science of Magic, but that story was mostly a display of slapstick.
I have no idea how magic works in this world.
Other stories like Photo Finished, Pinky Spy, and All's Fair in Love and Friendship featured characters acting in the extreme. This wasn't any sort of otherworldly power, it was just the characters being allowed to dial their reactions up and enjoy the absurdity.
Is it just me, or did things take a turn towards Weirdsville?
Indeed they did, young microchips. Yet Weirdsville is what makes this setting fun, and it can only be expressed through the characters. Which leads to the question, what do our heroines stand to lose? Canterlot High has a history of defeat, so it's not like anyone would think less of them if the losing streak continued. None of them know the students at Crystal Prep yet, so there's no personal rivalry. I'm afraid there's a lack of investment thus far, which carries forward to Principal Celestia's lackluster speech.
As we join together in the spirit of excellence, sportsmanship, and fidelity.
You mean other than us losing?
Oh, I thought that was just the sirens causing Flash's outburst, but methinks the lad's got a heckler streak in him. Plus, that's the look of someone who truly hates her job. Let's focus on Flash for a moment, because he starred in a short that exemplifies the idea behind these games. In a banner day, Flash, Microchips, and Sandalwood were all tasked with creating banners for the event. True to the expectation for males, the three teens competed to form a hierarchy. Obviously, Flash thought he should be top dog.
We should decorate it with the sheet music to my song, Love in a Flash.
Which might explain why you can't get a date.
Yeah. Hey!
They all compete, and by the end, they've accidentally created something good. Now they appreciate one another's work and actually form some mutual respect or group honor, a hallmark of tribe mentality.
This is just what happens when you allow love to lead the way.
With song.
Through the self-replicating material present in nearly all living organisms.
Problem is that a history of defeats and hazing demonstrate that the two schools don't follow this principle. See, Flash and his friends were all working towards a shared goal. The friendship games featured a conflicting goal. Both sides want to win. This too ties into tribe mentality. No matter how many disagreements exist within a group, that dissent evaporates when you introduce the other, an opponent from outside from which the group can gain short-term unity. Rainbow Dash does just this by pointing out the dangers her school has overcome. So while Celestia couldn't win everyone over with ideals, Rainbow boosts school spirit by appealing to survival. Things become more personal when Rainbow Dash ponies up without playing her instrument. This leads to the major concern on everyone's mind.
We don't want to be accused of cheating.
I thought you wouldn't want these 6 girls to become pariahs or test subjects. But maybe I'm channeling too much X-Men mentality. Either way, Sunset now has a goal. Understand what appears to be random magic. That's one half of the genuine conflict within this story. The other half resides in Crystal Prep with Sci-Twi. Despite having a cast of 2 schools, this really is a story about this duo. I wonder if this is a partial reflection of how Twilight might have grown up if she hadn't passed that magical entrance exam. This Twilight was never fully recognized, never given the opportunity to learn, and, worst of all, never had a teacher who was interested in seeing her reach her full potential. And I hear you say, Silver, you mischievous mortal. What about Dean Cadence?
Being around other people isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it's how you learn the most about yourself.
Much like Celestia's pep talk, this is a good ideal, but it doesn't feature any conviction. Throughout this movie, Cadence is going to be completely oblivious to how Twilight is treated. The Crystal Prep students go out of their way to shove and exclude her. The only thing she can gain from them is a very negative and harmful view of herself. Yet even then, that's not Cadence's worst offense. No, that belongs to the scene where we meet the movie's antagonist. Villain is too generous a term.
Why, the friendship games
Can you imagine how much more fun this character would be if they'd used that clip from the blooper reel? How much more entertaining she'd be as an antagonist if she kept trying to be in control while undermined by her own clumsiness? And how much more frightening it would be when she goes a step too far because the earlier humor lulled the audience. The evil principal is a familiar trope that represents stagnation, a resistance to the unconventional or growth, and becomes a symbol to rebel against. What we rarely see is why this is so important to them, which is why most high school movies are often forgettable. I'm asking the same question of Cinch, just as I wonder how Shining Armor could have such a sharpened chin. You can slice carrots on that thing!
Crystal Prep did. We always win.
This scene does a lot to establish the pressures bearing down on Twilight, but it comes at the cost of characters who are supposed to care for her. Cadence and Shining Armor are complacent in setting an ambush, pressuring her and failing to see the warning signs that Cinch orders both out so she can blackmail Twilight.
Though I suppose I could also have it denied.
Because of this scene, I wouldn't blame Twilight if she thought that Cadence and Shining Armor would either not believe her or not resist Cinch. So, we've got two schools, two teams, two leads who are not interested in the games but find themselves compelled to play, one out of a sense of belonging and the other under duress. The marketing for this movie featured a variety of sporting outfits, including 5 characters for Crystal Prep, none of whom have a strong enough presence to mention in this already crowded review. They're ego-driven distortions of the Humane Five's virtues. That's it. Though, as much as I criticize Equestria Girls for how marketing dictates story, they don't just throw away old ideas for the new. The rain booms remain a feature. Dare I say that Equestria Girls is relying upon the power of continuity. But that awareness also means shutting some ideas down, which is good. If the goal of this movie is to introduce a new Twilight that will be a steady presence, it's important to distinguish her as her own character rather than a copy-paste of the Twilight we've known. There's a way to do this, though it means Flash will be none too happy.
I gotta go.
Okay. Bye?
You might think this is me being mean to Flash, as is my penchant. But this is less about hazing a character who has suffered a lack of development, and more about avoiding a bad idea. This Twilight is not a stand-in for Equestria's Twilight. She's got her own views, her own goals, and her own perspective. I'm glad that this new Twilight doesn't show the same interest, because it both sets her apart as her own character and reinforces that love is more than replaceable roles. I see you back there, Jet Li's the one. Yeah, you better run! But after nearly half an hour of setup, Twilight's new scientific pendant leads her to her first encounter with her future friends, after she drains Rarity's magic, albeit unaware. But one thing that never changes, Pinkie makes for convenient exposition.
That Twilight is obviously the Twilight from this world, since it couldn't possibly be the Twilight from the Pony World, since the Twilight from the Pony World doesn't go to Crystal Prep or with glasses.
Everybody got that?
3 movies, and it's always Pinkie who explains things to the audience. It fits her character, but it also feels like a crutch. Though I bet Sunset could use something like that as she flips out over the random magic that's popping up.
And if she was here, we'd have already figured out why magic is randomly popping up during pep rallies and costume changes.
I like the contrast between Twilight and Sunset. One trying to earn recognition and approval, while the other afraid of losing it. Both seeking to understand magic, though with different goals. And after Twilight accidentally closes the portal, it's up to Sunset to address her in a respectful, well-planned,
Twilight, what have you been up to?
refreshingly direct attitude. At least this time the trouble's coming from someone you can address. Just don't let Pinkie do it. That face will haunt me for the rest of my days.
I don't think we could have chosen a better group to represent the excellence, sportsmanship, and friendship the games stand for.
Let's talk about these ideas. Friendship being first and foremost, because while I joke about Pinkie's peering into my soul, stop that! She does a fantastic job of breaking the ice and getting the two groups to enjoy one another's company. I say that if the goal is to get these two schools to build up a positive relationship, a fair or group party would be better. What about excellence? We finally get to see the school's skills on display as the competition begins. There are some fun bits like Pinkie and Fluttershy creating a Mona Lisa cake, and Crystal Prep can apparently handle basic architecture. Excellence takes many forms, but it's often the group that defines its recognition. This is a concept known as horizontal honor. It's a baseline of behavior or performance that is expected. Failure to meet this risks exclusion from the group. Canterlot High students are quick to celebrate and affirm, even when they lose. In fact, especially when they lose. Their group honor, mostly exemplified by Sunset and crew, states that you never leave someone feeling isolated. Crystal Prep's honor seems to say that victory is baseline and to be taken for granted. But look at how terrified they appear when they actually perform well without achieving victory, which leads us to the tradition of sportsmanship. In terms of horizontal honor, or the baseline of behavior, sportsmanship is usually just not being a jerk to the other team. Problem is that because horizontal honor is treated as a norm, it's quickly ignored as background noise. It's why Crystal Prep students can harass opponents they just surpassed without any consequence. But Crystal Prep is so one-note that it's easy to dismiss such an action as just evil. There are plenty of ways we can undermine this every day. Yet the false advertising games continue with the most impractical course.
Am I the only one who thinks this is overkill?
Thing is, this isn't the first time Equestria Girls has featured something remarkable. Remember Vinyl Scratch's transforming car? I found that charming, so I can't dismiss this competitive course on practical reasons. Even though real-world schools would go to war to have a budget like this. Yet this competition, combining archery, roller skating on dirt, and motocross, is the height of the competition subplot. So much like Vinyl's car, it's an element to the battle between two parties. Yet the Rainbooms versus the Sirens had a lot of energy behind it. A brainwashed school, the villains growing stronger, the Rainbooms having only just rallied and were incomplete until Twilight called the sunset. The friendship games have had very little change. The Humane Six are as close as ever. Crystal Prep is not a threat to the world, nor the protagonist's relations. If anything, Canterlot High has been showing its best by not becoming bitter or resentful, just a little defeatist. While Sunset's friends have been showing their best by keeping with their elements, there's really not a lot of growth taking place. Sunset and Twilight are the two bright notes in an otherwise monotone song. And because of that, a setting that should be wild and imaginative doesn't have the momentum needed. It comes off as excessive and a misdirection of effort, though it does serve Twilight's development. Tapping into the Hunger Games craze, the girls on each team must first compete a round of archery, something at which Twilight does not excel, and the jeering from her team drives home a repeating point.
I'm sure glad I don't go to Crystal Prep.
Here's where we revisit the idea of sportsmanship, but something above the norm. This is known as vertical honor, a person going above and beyond the baseline and in doing so setting an example for others to follow. For Applejack, the sportsmanship on display is that she can't let someone be excluded and suffer, no matter what team she's on.
Do you want to hit the bullseye or not? Then trust me.
What's nice is that no one shouts at her to stop. Every person who has an ounce of empathy on that field saw how much Twilight was struggling and had no problem bringing this to an end. Sportsmanship isn't about handing the win over to your opponent. It's more about how much you allow the competition to control your actions. That's why I'm quite proud of Applejack, who clearly has her head on straight. In contrast to Twilight, whose pendant/magic tracker sucks up Applejack's magic as it has with Rarity, Pinkie Pie, and Fluttershy. It also absorbed the portal's magic, which is how it can suddenly open a portal to Equestria and unleashes...
Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long.
Of course, with a killer set of vines on the field, the competition's called off.
We can still win this!
Mortality? What's that? So after the Wonder Colts do win despite several near-death situations, what's the next step?
Attention students, please proceed to the gym.
Okay, no. Let's try that again with common sense.
Attention students, get the frig off the field and go to the bus stop across the street. Do not separate from one another and await the police and your families to take you home. Do not go home by yourselves.
The games will continue and Crystal Prep will prevail despite your antics and whatever performance-enhancing regimen your students are on.
Because having a student die in the middle of these games would certainly have no effect on your beloved reputation. The only person who seems to be acting with justified anger is Sunset at Twilight, though I think some of that is projection.
You're supposed to be so smart, but did you ever think that you shouldn't be messing around with things you don't understand?
This movie has made it clear that Twilight is desperate for something to allow her to break free while being bombarded by Crystal Prep's negativity. That doesn't justify or excuse her actions, but it does make them understandable. We saw the first hints that she was losing control when Spike jumped through a portal and emerged with the ability to speak.
I don't really understand why I couldn't before. I mean, it's so easy.
But that event alone should have given Twilight pause. Instead, she's driven to know and claim more when she should just smash that equipment around her neck. Of course, Twilight being wrong doesn't make Sunset right. All the frustration from this magic, plus getting swept up in the competition, is bringing out some of Sunset's old traits. Not just the anger, but also a very high standard for herself.
I should know how to control the magic I brought here, but I don't. I let everyone down.
Yet it's those character flaws that keep Sunset interesting. She's being proactive in trying to find a solution. It's just that she sabotages herself. The sunset shimmer from Rainbow Rocks was so burdened by her fall, she didn't have much of a voice. Now that she's gained back some confidence, her challenge is to accept the part that enables action without letting the aggression become the norm. She's still working on it because she's buying into the wrong idea.
The students here at CHS don't just want to win, they want to beat Crystal Prep.
Want and need are very different. They need to realize that this game does not define them and that they can only control their own behavior, which, son of a gun, they're doing that. This brings us back to the idea that the game should be called off. Yet another missed opportunity for the supporting cast. Imagine for a moment that Celestia and the others decide to call things off. Yet the students from both schools assert that, win or lose, they want to see this through to the end. Thus, they all gather in the courtyard in a sit-in. Celestia can then smile and shrug, admitting that the two schools are finally working together. But Crystal Prep is supposed to be the most terrible place ever, so we focus more on them pressuring Twilight to use magic. Worse still, she's suffering the pressure in the form of woo-ah-oos. Not many people know the deadly menace of chorus hazing. And so we finally get a threat that's greater than just a mean-spirited prep school. After a rather intense transformation scene, we get Midnight Sparkle.
There's a whole other world right there, and it's just filled with magic!
Well, this went from a 2 to a 10 rather suddenly. And while killer plants in the middle of a race don't warrant any action, giant pits leading to another world do get folks moving. So the Crystal Prep kids finally do something to help, which puts them just above Principal Bugout. And other adults who just stand there, slack-jawed. But at this point I feel like it's too far along for me to give a flying Booyah! Stuck the landing and back in my fine feathered form. I wonder how the ponies are viewing all this. A bunch of weird bipedal creatures broke their sky and are about to fall down. The only pony who I think would be happy about all this would be Lyra. So having contributed in her own way to this situation, it's Sunset's time to shine.
I know you feel powerful right now, like you can have everything you want. I've been where you are. I've made the same mistake you're making.
I enjoy it when a character who has made a mistake uses that to save another. It's this moment where the character's experience crystallizes and transforms an ugly memory into something creative. And as such, this moment of awesomeness requires the right music.
By your powers combined,
I said awesomeness.
You got the touch!
That is awesome, but I think the Transformers fans would maul me. I'll roll with it. So we get to see two powerful human alicorns have a pushing match. I'm just saying that Nightmare Moon and Celestia had a little aerial combat. But it's worth noting that while Sunset has the power to undo Twilight's damage, she's not faring well in the direct confrontation, which is par for the course. A villain has shed limits and their ego empowers them. Contrast that against someone whose motive is to save others, and going all out can seem to go against this ideal. A lot of heroes appear weaker at first because they have to reconcile the desire to save against the need to not hold back. Thankfully, Spike the now talking dog finally gets to do something.
Spike.
Even though he only got to talk halfway through, Spike has been the only character totally supporting Twilight throughout this mess. It's very fitting that a look from him is the only thing that can snap Twilight back to sense. And Sunset does not go for the win. Instead, she goes for the save.
Take my hand, Twilight. Let me show you there's another way.
Here's why I love this scene far more than any of the Elements of Harmony moments. Even if it's to make things better, zapping someone good is a horrible idea. It's reducing morality to a light switch, and if you can zap someone good, they can be changed back just as easily. What Sunset is doing here is meeting Twilight on an even plane, showing that she does understand how Twilight feels and is offering a chance to explore magic with a companion. For the first time, this world's Twilight doesn't have to face the future alone. It's a choice and an anchor for reformation. And with the day saved, we can have the final race to see who can find.
Well, I know these friendship games haven't been what any of us expected.
Oh no.
But given what we've all just been through...
Don't you dare! Don't you do it!
I think it's fair to declare us all winners.
Ugh. Look, the topic of everybody wins or trophies for trying has been done to comedic death. It's even immortalized in song.
See, they grew up with undeserved confidence, 'cause they got trophies just for participating.
I don't view things like this as empowering everyone to feel like a winner. I think it's more instilling a fear of losing. Want to know some of my favorite My Little Pony Friendship is Magic episodes? Well, there's Sisterhood Social.
I don't even care that we didn't win. This was so much fun!
And Brotherhood Social.
I guess I just thought if I could fill in for Applejack at the social and get you a blue ribbon, well, I could be some pony you looked up to again.
You've always been a hero to me, Big Mac, and
You always will be.
Heck, even mixed episodes like the last roundup had a good message.
Applejack, you're not a failure, and we're your friends. We don't care if you came in 50th place. You're still #1 in our books.
I love these episodes for reinforcing the fact that a loss is not an end. We're not defined by a scoreboard, and the people who care about us the most won't base that care on a win-loss ratio. Even though Canterlot High does show good sportsmanship, they never really drive home that a game, no matter how invested we may feel, is still just a game. No, this whole elaborate setup has been just to answer one question.
So, you're staying at Crystal Prep?
There is no reason to stay around a place this soul-crushing. In fact, I'm amazed that Twilight managed to walk away from Crystal Prep without flashing them the double deuce. So we close out with Twilight meeting Twilight, which was actually a bit of a spoiler when this movie first aired.
I didn't get your messages until just now because I was caught in this time travel loop, and honestly, it was the strangest thing that's ever happened to me.
And that's it. Sci-Twi is now a part of Canterlot High, and Equestria Girls no longer has to devote time to Equestria itself to fill out the roster. Oh yeah, Sunset did get an answer to her question.
We pony up when we're showing the truest part of ourselves. I was so busy waiting for someone else to give me the answers that I gave up looking for them myself.
Unfortunately, that doesn't answer why music was the original channel for the magic. Seems a bit backwards. More important are the standout moments of empathy, courage, support, and general other-centeredness. This movie features brilliant flashes for the main cast, or at least reminds us of why they're so likable. Yet it's set against such a drab backdrop. There's no mystery to this place, and through inaction, many of the characters become disappointing or even unlikable. Though I will say that reviewing this has given me a better perspective on why I like adventure stories so much. These settings require a character to go beyond the norm and often feature a more altruistic drive by the end. Vertical honor is inherent to these stories. Sports feature a greater athletic prowess than the average Joe, but to really celebrate a person with vertical honor, you have to break the game first. As a guy who enjoys talking about characters and their shadow aspects, Crystal Prep feels like a waste. It's a one-note, awful place from which Twilight escapes, and the concept of change in the environment is left up in the air. I think this movie could have greatly improved if, instead of focusing on interacting with Twilight, the Humane Six made an impact on their rivals while Twilight observed. That could add a better aspect to the Crystal Prep students while still building a bond with Twilight. Although, I feel like the friendship games themselves could work with a little refinement. Ooh, idea.
Attention, drones of Canterlot High! Henceforth, the friendship games are officially cancelled. Instead, they shall be repurposed into the Friendship Festival, a gathering in which both schools will prepare food, games, and entertainment to share. For the first Friendship Festival, we will be holding a Schoola drive for both Canterlot High and Crystal Prep. What is Schoola, you ask? It's an organization to which people can send in gently used and outgrown clothing. That clothing is then sold at a discount online, and for every $5 earned, $2 is sent to partner schools to help finance programs like art, music, and other creative activities. You know, the first things on the chopping block when the budget gets tight. It's a way to clear out one's closet and help fund school programs at the same time. Visit www.schoola.com for more information. And just to be clear, I have not been paid to make this announcement. I just like programs that help out the arts. And since I'm making this announcement on the school's PA system...
Clearly I have the principal's full support. That's why we've agreed to end this farce of competitive program for something that might actually do some good. I'm Silver-Quill. Thanks for watching. Now you sit there and think about what you could do better. I need to go make the same announcement to Crystal Prep.